Okay, how comes there's more and more of you now? This is like 11 o'clock here in the UK. Are you guys just waking up or something in your time zone? This is like getting a bit late. Kruto, okay, you're none. So who's got the next brilliant game? Should we just pick another notable game from this guy Charousek then? I don't mind, that's kind of interesting. Should I just pick another random Charousek notable game? So I'll just go to chessgames.com. Pillsbury. That was a draw. Do we want to look at a draw? We can't look at a draw, can we? Are we going to break a cardinal rule here, guys, and look at a draw? Do you really want to look at a draw? Not this one. Okay, I thought so. Okay, let's look at a win. Okay, so this is their encounter in Budapest 1896. So endgame technique. So that's what happens when you use one of those increments on ChessCube, like 10-1. You can get to play some endgames, long and arduous ones, if you have the increment. Otherwise, forget it. You'll never get a good endgame. So, okay. E4, and Pillsbury of course was a fantastic player as well, wasn't it? Hastings 1895 is the one he won. Was it Hastings 1895? Anyway, he was a fantastic star in chess, who also tragically died young. So there were severe health issues and poverty issues around players in that time, and that's probably why, you know, in the pre-FIDE years, also it wasn't very well organized for the World Championships. People, when they won the crown, they were very reluctant to lose it very quickly. They wanted to hold onto it. Maybe there's a financial security aspect to that as well. Okay, so these were bad times, but these were brilliant players. So D5 from Pillsbury. Harry playing very energetically with the black pieces. So D3, D4. Knight B1. Ah, dear, oh dear. If you just seen my Warzone games, I like Knight E2 here. Then you just play Knight F3, and you can play it like King's Engine. You know, G3, Bishop G2. That's pretty cool. Yeah. Or even the knight can swing to G3 later. I'm not sure about this Knight B1. I don't mean to be critical, but this Knight B1, I don't know. Seems a bit passive putting it back in the box, yeah? When it could have just swung round like a tango to G3. Okay, so Knight F3. Is he going to collect the light square bishop? Black voluntarily gives up the light square bishop, you see, before the Steinitzian theories about position and accumulating advantages. Giving up the bishop pair wasn't seen as a big deal, but you know, grandmasters would sometimes often loathe to give up bishops, you know, nowadays of course, without good reason. So is black strengthening control of e5? From this bishop exchange, e5 has been strengthened. So if black can get a good knight on e5, that might justify, in fact, bishop g4 takes f3. F takes e5, so he wants some pressure later on f6. Doesn't mind about the e5 square. Okay, queen d7. Maybe black's going to castle queenside. Knight g4. So they might be coming in, well, attacking here. Immediately knight takes h2 and knight takes f3 of threats. Also potentially e3 might be useful. But I guess the primary threat is knight takes h2 here. And also knight takes f3 and bishop h2. So the knight's taken off. So h3. Okay. So where's the knight going to go? Is black just going to do a fishing pole with h5? Nope. The knight goes back positionally. Knight d2. So is the knight going to be undermined now? Knight f3. Just try and challenge that knight on e5. We have a very high rated player honouring us, Mr. Unstoppable. I think I should acknowledge his presence. Hi there. Mr. Unstoppable, you're an international master, aren't you? You're a British international master? Anonymous? Okay, hi there anyway. If you've got any questions, you know, just... Or if you can answer any questions, that'd be great. I've already gone over like four games already, so... bit knackered now. So any questions, guys? Mr. Unstoppable is here. So knight g6. Okay. So what's happening with knight g6? Black doesn't mind the exchange of the dark square bishops because he wants to accentuate his control of e5 maybe. Black has got that lovely e5 square in the position. White's compensation, that semi-open f file, and he can undermine e5 probably with knight f3 anyway. So queen g4. There's also other dynamics now. Pressure on g7, the diagonal. Okay. So knight c4. And maybe this could be followed up with a4 after the queen moves. Just you know, if he wants to leave the knight on c4, it might be possible with a4. Alternatively, he could be trying to just break open the centre, or maybe even play on the king side. So there's a few options maybe. Rook f5. Okay, rook f5. So he's not minding. Well, rook f5 actually stops b5 anyway, and also it prepares this battery. And if you've got that battery, then e5 is going to be more effective at some point. Or maybe you want to chase the knight back and then play e5. So c6, possibly with the intention of b5. h4. Sorry, is there a war zone at 11:16? Mr. Unstoppable writes that there's a war zone at 11:16. And he's the unknown. That's the beauty of online chess, King. Yes. Okay. So queen e6. Okay, what is this queen e6 doing? Pinning the rook or something. What else? Okay, so h5 happens. So is white's going to be forced to play something like rook g5? That would protect the queen. Or rook f4. Or can white just play something like h6 maybe? But then does protect g7, and then the queen could sidestep and protect g7. So maybe the rook would have to move here. It does move. Okay, the queen's come off. So we have some endgame pressure. Is e5 going to be played at some point? Clamping down, restraining the pawns here. Okay. So maybe something like rook f5 would get access to the queen side. Or maybe e5. Where does the king want to head? It wants to come towards the centre maybe at some point. It's coming towards the centre now. So he takes... Okay, we're just rooks. So we're in slot racers mode. I used to play this game called Slot Racers with my brother. Really addictive game. The rooks are like the things in slot races, your cars. Then they only go left or right, up and down. So rook f5. Is there a potential maybe to try and do structural damage? Maybe get this rook over here. I don't know. Or is it just e5? E5 looks to be the major strategic threat. That will try and break down some of the black pawn structure. Get a rook on the 7th. Get a rook on the 7th. That would be good as well. So rook e6. So maybe the king can step in now. If e5 wants to be played, maybe the king comes in. It does come in. Okay, e5 is blocked. c3. Trying to maybe use the c file. If c5 just take, maybe use the c file. Get to c7. Takes. Okay. Black's probably loath. It doesn't want to do this because that would be a big rolling pawn center. He holds on there. C4. Surprising move, C4. So, what's the intention of C4? It keeps hold of the idea of E5. And this pawn might be a target if Black's not careful. So E5, is that going to be played? No, he's trying to dislocate the pawn. So if C5 takes, and he can always use the B file now to get to B7. Is E5 finally going to be played here? Surely. No. The tension is really capped here, isn't it? For E5. Again, it's not even used. Okay, so is A5 going to be played? A5, just to invade via the A file. Or Rook A5 here? Okay, I finally predicted the move. So maybe there's E5 as well as restraining this pawn. E5 again from the side. Nope. The king moves to F3. What on earth is that? The king moving to F3. Let's find out. C5 check. Ah, now look. I think we have an implication here that the king might march to C4 to attack here. Where can this rook go? Where can this king go? It's trapped. Oh dear. This king march to C4 looks a bit tasty. And it's happening. King's coming to C4. And now I would imagine, you know, this rook could come down and maybe attack here. But again, this is protecting that. So it wouldn't be that. Maybe it's here to be able to play E5. Because then if you get rook E4 in, you're on that pawn. So could that be the next stage? Really go for E5 now. Whoops. It's happening. E5. Finally. I've predicted it. Finally. So D4 is vulnerable. It's dropping off. But what about F5? Do you want to take it here? If you do take it here, there's check and then taking on G7. Possibly. He plays check. Takes on G7. He's going to take with the king. No, rook G6. Hitting 2 pawns. Okay. And this pawn's in pre. All the pawns are starting to be in pre. Check. Driving the king to the corner. Now he takes here. So we've got a big pass pawn here, big pass pawn here. These outside pawns are of less significance potentially. So the pawns are coming up. The rooks are always belong behind the pawns is a gross generalization about rook and pawn endings. But here it's kind of true. If there's no checks, you know, white can herd this pawn forward, it just without harassment. Check. Okay, so this is now looking absolutely decisive. Check. This D pawn's pushing through. I think it's one of the strongest pass pawns you can have is the D pawn. And here actually black resigns. His pawns never got going. So that was a fantastically played rook and pawn ending. With seemingly amazing restraint at not being tempted to play E5 earlier. So let's have a look at that game again. So it was kind of a positional win in the rook and pawn end game. If we go to the rook and pawn ending phase in particular, so a lot of pieces did get exchanged off. The queens came off, and we have this slot races like rook and pawn ending. So how can we boil down white's plans here? So C3 starts, but the cunning thing about C3, it wasn't to take. It was just to surround the pawn later by playing C4. So he's surrounding the pawn and making it difficult to be protected. So in a way, he's like virtually isolating that pawn. Once the pawn is virtually isolated, then he's ready to play C5 and get his king over to attack the pawn from C4. So this next plan to attack the pawn from c4, and then he's ready to attack the pawn from e4 once e5 is played. So he attacks the pawn from e4, but not to take the pawn immediately, but rather to get these pawns going. This d pawn in particular is going to be the winning trump card in the position, so he doesn't mind a few other pawns coming off, and now he's got his winning trump card, this d pawn, so he doesn't mind losing the b pawn, because the d pawn is the one that's going to carry him to victory. So a fantastic rook and pawn ending there. Hope you enjoyed that. Let's stop that one, and I think I might play Warzone. Okay, thanks very much.